Welcome to this Sunday morning meditation class. I'm Hugh Byrne with the Insight Meditation Community Washington, IMCW. Been teaching with IMCW for about 20 years. And this class is a class of IMCW. It has been for going back to, I think, 2003, and also sponsored by the Center for Mindful Living, which is under the umbrella of IMCW. It has its own kind of programs and wonderful offerings that you'll hear more about at the end. So many of the folks here are very active in the Center for Mindful Living, and we'll invite you, if you're new or if you're not familiar with CML, to get on the get on the listserv, get on the mailing list, and hear about the wonderful offerings, as well as the broader IMCW offerings that you can find on the imcw.org website. And it's good to be with you again. As I mentioned, I'm joining the class today from London. So I'm just here for a few days, going back tomorrow, just visiting family member who's very sick, and maybe the last chance to visit with them. So been able to spend some time each day with her. So that's been good. And today we're going to continue over the last probably 6 sessions since January. I've been talking about the overarching theme of the paths of wellness and awakening, and kind of distinguishing between cultivating everyday well-being and freedom from stress and worry and all that, and the Buddha's path of awakening, which kind of is a kind of more points to a kind of a deeper level of freedom that all of the Buddha's teachings are organized around the capacity, the potential we have to wake up to the deepest freedom. So I've been exploring these two, if you like, two paths or two goals of our practice, honoring and respecting each of them because they're different. And in the last couple of sessions, I've been focusing on the path of awakening, and I'll continue to do that today. Just a little bit about the format of the class. It's very, very straightforward. We after the introductions, we begin with a period of meditation, 20 minutes or so, guided meditation. Then I'll talk on the theme of the day. It's normally maybe 30 minutes or so. Typically, Emily leads us in movement, some gentle, mindful movement. She's got busy on a project, so she won't be with us today. And I haven't seen Kirsten here, but if sometimes Kirsten joins us, sometimes Kirsten leads the movement. But otherwise, we'll maybe survive without movement today. We can do our own movement as we're going along to stay comfortable. Then we'll have some time for some sharing. Today it will be in the full group. So anything people would like to share or questions they might have, we'll spend some time on that. Then we'll have a short meditation to finish, shorter than the first one, and then some announcements about upcoming activities. So that's basically the format of the class, and I want to welcome everyone, and particularly warm welcome to those joining us for the first time or the second time today. And please feel free to put your where you're joining us from in the chat, and share anything you'd like to there. And we'll begin with a meditation. So I invite you to find a comfortable posture, in the space where you are, whatever will allow you to be comfortable, at ease. It might take some moments to just move a little, to settle into your posture. You might also put yourself on mute, so just have limit the background noise, and inviting the shoulders to relax, letting the chest be open so you can breathe easily, letting your hands rest where they're comfortable, in your lap or on your knees or thighs. If you're more comfortable lying down, that's a perfectly acceptable posture. One of the 4 postures, along with sitting, standing, walking, and 4th one, reclining. So whatever will allow you to be as fully here as you can be for this period of meditation. If you'd like to, you can close your eyes, let your attention come inward. You might consciously invite the attention to drop out of the thinking mode where we spend a lot of our time, and just into being here, feeling your body connected with the surface beneath you, feeling perhaps one part of the body touching another, hands touching your legs or lap, hands touching each other. You're feeling the space around your body. Feeling any coolness or warmth. It can be helpful to begin with just taking a few longer, deeper breaths as a way of helping us settle, arrive, shift more out of the more kind of activated mode, busy mode, and just letting us be here now. And breathing in, know that you're breathing in. And breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. And in your own time, letting the breath settle into its natural rhythm. Breathing in and breathing out. And if you like, you might consciously invite a smile to your face, or a half smile to your face. Just activating the muscles around the eyes and around the mouth. The smile can help us settle more deeply into being here, into what's sometimes called the rest and digest mode of the nervous system. And just being here now, putting to one side the thoughts about the future, and come back to those later, thoughts about the past. And just letting the attention rest in your experience as it is right now. Your breathing, bodily feelings, whatever's here, whatever's showing up right now. If thoughts do come up, it's not a problem. We can just notice them and choose not to kind of follow them where they go. Just come back to the body, come back to the breath. Just bringing a kind and non-judging awareness to whatever you're experiencing. Nothing that shows up is wrong or a mistake. Just what's showing up out of causes and conditions. Something is stimulating an emotion or a mind state or a physical feeling. And the invitation is to meet whatever is here with acceptance. I think it was Carl Rogers said, when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. So I begin with acceptance. This moment without judgment. As Dorothy Hunt says, this moment in the heart space, where everything that is welcome. Can be helpful to have a a focus for our attention. The mind often has a mind of its own and kind of goes off. So it's helpful to have something, some aspect of our experience that we can let our attention rest on. Maybe the breath or bodily feelings or sounds. Whatever's most helpful, whatever most helps you to be here, as fully here as you can be right now. For many, the breath is a powerful support for our practice. Just meeting the breath as it is, in breath and out breath. Letting the breath be our home base. And then when the mind goes off into plans or memories, daydreams, worries, when you notice that, you can just gently and kindly invite the attention back to the breath, to the body. An alternative kind of attention to resting on the breath or bodily feelings or sounds is to just let the awareness be open to whatever is present, whatever's coming up, whether it's bodily feelings or thoughts or emotions, and just kind of witnessing the coming, the arising and the passing of different experiences. This can be helpful if the mind is pretty calm. If the mind's already active, then maybe there's more tendency to get pulled into different things. But if there's some level of stability, this is another really helpful way of being present. Just allowing whatever is here to come, letting it be, and letting it go when it's ready to go. This is from woo men, 10,000 flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, snow in winter. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. Making space for whatever is present, knowing that you can come back, you can begin again in any moment. Whatever's gone on before, however long the mind may have been caught up in something, or however intense it might be, just to begin again, this breath, this feeling, this moment. Finish with this poem by Spanish poet Antonio Machado called Walker. Walker, your footsteps are the road and nothing more. Walker, there is no road. The road is made by walking. Walking, you make the road, and turning to look behind, you see the path you never again will step on. Walker, there is no road, only foam trails on the sea. Walker, there is no road, only foam trails on the sea. Please imagine the sound of a bell. And take your time coming back into the group together. I did bring a bell with me, but it's in my suitcase somewhere. didn't think of that before we started today. So good to, I think we all know what a bell sounds like. So welcome everyone. Welcome those who may have joined us during the meditation. Thanks for the kind messages in the chat. Francisca is in San Jose, Costa Rica. Wonderful, lovely country. Jenny thank you for sharing that. Kirsten's here.
Yay.
That's great. Thank you, Kirsten. We'll have a talk, and then Kirsten can lead us in the movement. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, great to have folks with us from many different places, many different parts of the country and outside the country. If you came late, I'm joining from London today, just here for a few days. So I'd like to continue the discussion about the path of awakening, and the really all of the Buddha's teachings revolve around our potential to wake up out of delusion, wake up out of not seeing things the way they really are and getting caught up in, I think we all know the kind of things we get caught up in, whether it's craving or whether it's aversion to people and things, or whether it's just, being disconnected from ourselves or our experience. And so many ways we get caught up in what the Buddha called dukkha, suffering, normally translated as suffering, but kind of feeling of things being not as we would really want them to be, and promising the possibility that we can really fully wake up out of suffering and live freely. So in the last session a couple of weeks ago, I talked about what do we mean by awakening? What is awakening? And some elements of that really are that awakening involves really a fundamental transformation of our way of seeing the world, way of being in the world, that really transforms us as human beings. There's definitely a before and there's an after. There's a kind of a way in which we're often caught up in suffering and we're entangled in so many different ways. And then with awakening, there is ultimately there's an end to suffering. And, in different traditions, this may be spoken about in somewhat different ways, but, in the Theravadan tradition, speak about different stages of awakening. So not necessarily all at once, but each stage involves a really fundamental letting go. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, just naming some of these stages. So this kind of deep transformation of our way of being in the world and way of seeing things and way of living, and that awakening entails a complete ending of suffering. that comes from, the Buddha taught in the Four Noble Truths, comes from abandoning the clinging that causes suffering. You let go of clinging and craving, then, what arises is freedom. The absence of those kind of painful, difficult states, and a way of being in the world where there's great ease, there's great peace, and at the deepest level there's great freedom. Because we're not caught up in fear, or we're not caught up in craving or greed or hatred. Those things are have been let go of. And perhaps we can see that in our own practice. In the smaller ways where we can let go of, maybe we felt angry with a person, or we hadn't forgiven them for something, and then we somehow find it within us to let go, and the sense of freedom that can come with that we're not carrying around this burden. We're not carrying around the big pack of this, they did this to me, that kind of thing. So not to say there may not have been good causes, good reasons for feeling angry or all of this, but as long as we're holding on, as long as we're clinging to that judgment or anger, then we're the one that's suffering. We sometimes think the other person is suffering because we're judging them, but really we're the one that's suffering. And letting go is like putting down a hot coal. So what the Buddha's pointing to is just the outer edges of this, the possibilities that exist to let go completely. And I spoke last time about how awakening really arises through insight. It's through clear seeing. This tradition is often called the insight meditation tradition, or vipassana. Vipassana means insight or seeing clearly. And it's really a breaking through to see things as they really are, to gain insight. So, as I said last time, it's the seeing that frees us. It's the insight that frees us from suffering. It's kind of breaking through to see things clearly. It's a wonderful book I've mentioned at different times by Rob Babaya, wonderful late Dharma teacher, died 3 years ago. His book is called Seeing That Frees, and it's really about insight, and it's about emptiness, about letting go. But it's the insight that frees us. Insight into how clinging causes suffering, and how letting go of clinging leads to freedom. And that's one profound insight we can gain when we say, oh, if I let go, I experience a completely different reality, if you like. I'm not entangled anymore. It can be seeing into just the impermanence of everything, and that nothing can be held onto, and that there's not a self that owns all of this, that the self is itself a construction. It's a construction, and in its problematical aspects really comes out of clinging. So it's the insight that leads us to freedom, to awakening, and that seeing clearly opens us to the deepest freedom and the deepest peace possible, really, in this life. So what we're talking about, what the Buddha was pointing to, is the deepest possibilities of freedom in this lifetime. That it's not a freedom that somehow dispenses with physical pain or discomfort or sickness, aging, dying. All those things happen, but they cease to be problematical in the way that they can be problematical to us, where we say, oh, I'm sick and I don't want to be sick. Oh, why am I sick? Why am I always getting sick? Why am I getting old? other people should get old, but I shouldn't get old. All the delusions of the mind around that, and if there's a genuine acceptance, it's like the Wu Men poem, where the different seasons of things. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life, And I was just thinking, as I was reading that poem, I was thinking, yeah, this is the best season of my life. I mean, I feel, and I don't know how you feel, but whatever you are, and quite a lot of us are in the what a good friend Regina calls the late afternoon of our life. Which I love that phrase, the late afternoon or early evening or whatever we want to call it. But we can be, truly happy, whatever stage of our life is, if we can come to acceptance of, where we are, the body as it's getting older, the mind as it's getting, maybe less, holding on to things as compared with earlier, and all of those things that's the freedom that really doesn't depend on conditions. It doesn't depend on the right things happening or, all of this of, getting rid of the things we don't like, but rather we can be at peace amidst the ups and downs of life, the joys and sorrows of life. We still take care with have a headache, we might take some medication or whatever. It doesn't mean we don't, do what we need to do, but it's from a different a different place, really, from a place of acceptance rather than wanting to control things, wanting life to be the way we want it to be. So what I want to explore today particularly is the question of how does this process of awakening happen? Particularly the question of whether awakening is just something that, just happens, or is it something that is a product of practice? It has been many, many debates in the Buddhist tradition around whether awakening is sudden or gradual. And it's a very interesting question. Whole paths or whole sects, if you like, of Buddhism have been created around the view or the belief around about awakening and how awakening happens. For example, in Zen Buddhism, the Rinzai sect of Buddhism was, very much comes out of the founders, belief that awakening is a sudden thing, and it's not about gradual training or gradual practice. It's about a kind of a once and for all breaking through. And there are other schools of Buddhism which are, very much focused on a gradual training of the mind and heart to help us to wake up. The end may be the same, awakening, but the view of how we get there is different. So, you might ask, even as we get started on this, well, why is it important? Is it anything more than inside baseball or inside Buddhism? Is it just kind of arcane discussions of, this way is important, this way is the right way, etc. And it, that doesn't have a lot to do with our practice. I would say that it's an important question because how we practice may differ considerably based on how we think or believe awakening happens or can happen. So, for example, if we adhere to a view that awakening happens suddenly and is in some way kind of mysterious, it just happens, then probably we're likely to put less energy and attention into gradually training the mind. That in a way, kind of anyone could awaken at any time to the deepest truth about seeing things how they really are and letting go. I mean, that could be one view, that it could happen anytime. And in some ways there's some truth in that, but I'm going to talk about, kind of unpack that a little bit more. So it can affect us. We may put, in that case, we might put less emphasis on developing qualities like gratitude or like generosity, compassion, or wise speech, wise action, etc. Even the ethical qualities may be, well, why do they need to matter if just awakening is just in a sense, a kind of a happenstance, just a happening, and there are teachers who focus really on, trying to get the mind to a place where kind of it's ready to crack open, almost like a baby bird coming out, the cracking of the egg, just cracking open. And there's something about that that's, I think, a kind of a helpful image. So those teachers, for example, sometimes, the traditions, Indian tradition of Advaita Vedanta, focus very much on non-dual awareness, and very much sudden awakening. So if on the other hand, we believe that awakening comes through gradual training and development, we might be less likely to give attention, or so much attention to, how do we bring about, how do we create the conditions for a sudden breakthrough to awakening. We might be more focused on, well, let me just do my practice. In Zen, there's a tradition, a term used is shikantaza, just sitting. The focus is very, very much on the practice. And don't worry about, whatever will happen, but don't worry about trying to make anything happen. Just sit and, with your eyes open, looking at the blank wall, and just kind of let the mind, let things come and go, and just see what arises out of that. So one's view on this question may affect the way we practice. But my own view is that the most helpful way of engaging with this question, which I do think is a relevant and significant question, the most helpful way of engaging is to not hold on to any particular view, but explore the question through our own experience. Also learning from others' experiences, but in a pragmatic, in an experiential way, and if you like, a phenomenological way, just aware of, what is happening, So let's spend a little time looking at this question of gradual or sudden awakening. It's very clear, if you look at the Buddha's teachings, that the Buddha taught a gradual path to awakening. The path that he taught was a gradual path. The Noble Eightfold Path, the fourth of the Noble Truths, the Four Noble Truths, lays out a path of training in cultivating, living ethically, living virtuously, in meditation, training the mind in meditation, and cultivating wisdom. And this is really is gradual. It's like doing it over time, repeating, learning from our mistakes, growing through the training. And, so that is very much a gradual training. The teachings of the Buddha on what are called the 7 factors of awakening, the beautiful qualities of mind that are very, very conducive to awakening: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity, these 7 qualities, that they're also a gradual training. They're kind of creating a mind and a heart that's receptive, that's open to insight, to seeing clearly, and to waking up. Similarly, the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness, particularly in the major sutta, major discourse, the Satipatthana Sutta, the teaching, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, talks about this as mindfulness as a direct path to liberation, leads directly to liberation. But it's a gradual path, taking us along through different steps and different practices to reach there. So it's very, very clear that for the Buddha, the gradual training is essential to waking up. We need to train the heart and the mind to develop the qualities, to both develop wholesome qualities, like some of those I've mentioned, the heart practices, compassion, loving kindness, joy, equanimity, generosity, gratitude, as well as letting go or abandoning the unwholesome qualities of mind, greed, aversion, ignorance. And he emphasized the importance of training. He said, nothing can do you more harm than an untrained mind, and nothing can do you more good than a trained mind. That training the mind is essential. So you don't train the mind without it being a gradual path. There's like one-time training. It's a systematic body of training. So the Buddha was very, very clear about this being the path to awakening, being a gradual path. But at the same time, the Buddha's awakening, we've heard about it, probably read about it, heard it in talks, that sitting under the tree in Bodh Gaya 2,500 years ago in a full moon night in May, and, having this profound, sudden in the sense of over, a relatively short period of time, certainly over a night, seeing things really clearly that would, provided the insight to free, Siddhartha's heart and mind so that he became the Buddha, the awakened one. So this was certainly a sudden breakthrough. A sudden, he'd been practicing for 6 years in different trainings, etc. But the awakening itself was certainly a breaking through, and the language that has come down to us to describe his awakening and the outcome of it is very dramatic, and it's powerful. It says, seeking but not finding the house builder. Lovely term, the house builder, how we create suffering, really. I traveled through the round of countless births. Oh, painful is birth ever and again. House builder, you have now been seen. You shall not build the house again. Your rafters have been broken down. Your ridgepole is demolished too. My mind has now attained the unformed nibbana, the unconditioned, the absolute letting go, and reached the end of every kind of training, of craving, it reached the end of every kind of craving. So the Buddha's teaching the gradual path to awakening, and at the same time, his own awakening was certainly a sudden breaking through. This image of breaking through to something. And the earliest teachings that have come down to us in the Pali Canon, that is the first written teachings that teachings were memorized for about 5 centuries after the Buddha's death, and then were written down on palm leaves in what is today Sri Lanka. And that body of teachings, about 6,000 talks or discourses, is known as the Pali Canon, the early Buddhist teachings. And these teachings, as well as obviously the teachings of insight meditation and the Theravadan tradition out of which they come, that's the tradition that came south from India to Sri Lanka and then to Thailand and Burma and Cambodia and Laos, somewhat Vietnam too. And then the other tradition, Mahayana, went north along the Silk Road and went to ultimately Japan, China, Japan, Tibet, Mongolia, Korea, etc. So different traditions, but all holding the kind of the central teachings of suffering and the end of suffering and the possibility of awakening, and really all pointing to, or teaching about the possibility of waking up to the deepest freedom. And these teachings emphasize the Pali Canon teachings emphasize the gradual training of the mind that creates the conditions for insight to arise, that frees us from suffering. So it's important, to emphasize that the training creates conducive conditions for insight. It doesn't in itself create insight. There is a way, I believe, in which the arising of liberating insight is always in some way mysterious. It's always a breaking through. It's not something that is, a direct product of the training. You can't say, if I do this training, it will inexorably lead to awakening. What you can say, I think, is if you follow this path of training, we will be in a position for the potential of breaking through to insight to be much perhaps more likely to arise. There's a saying, I think it's from Zen, and that is that awakening is accidental, but the training and practice make us accident prone. And I think that that's a good statement of that, because ultimately insight does come out of something more mysterious, something deeper, that is not just a product of, doing this practice or doing this investigation. Something always, it's like, it's almost like, solving a puzzle. I do these New York Times things of the spelling bee and, trying to put together the different words. And there's always something that, it kind of breaking out. Sometimes, obviously, you can say, oh, yeah, those words, make up this, those letters make up this word. But sometimes, quite often, it's just like, oh, that word kind of springs out of, the mind, the recesses of the mind or something. And this is another whole level of that. And in the Zen tradition, they have the practice of koans, these kind of straight, paradoxical kind of statements and stories that, you can't answer them. You can't make sense of them in a normal, logical way. But there is a way in which, you can break through to an answer and to that koan. What's the sound of one hand clapping? And the Zen master sends you off to solve that koan. And there's all sorts of stories of people coming back and jumping up in the air, and the teacher dismisses them. No, then there's the teacher with enough experience can say, yes, this person has broken through. There's some deep insight has come, it might be hitting the teacher with a stick. They seem to do a lot in the Zen tradition, but hopefully not with too much violence. But it's that kind of a breaking through. Awakening is accidental, but training and practice make us accident prone. I think what we can look at, we see the gradual path as is kind of creating the conditions for breaking through to happen, for awakening, for insight to happen, to arise. You could think of it as, in the metaphor, actually simile of like, tilling the soil and watering a plant and giving it appropriate water, ensuring sunlight. But none of those actually make the plant flower to to bud or blossom. The plant flowers out of its inner potential to flower, and the providing the conditions helps facilitate them. Yes, they need to be there, because if there wasn't any water or there wasn't any sunlight, etc., the flower wouldn't have the conditions to arise. But it's not the watering that makes the sunlight that makes the flower blossom. It's the inherent potential of the flower, and that's the same. I think it's a useful image that we have this internal potential to flower, to bud. And it's wonderful that the word Buddha is the same word as in the same origin in Indo-European languages as the word for a flower budding. Buddha, flowering, opening. And it's that opening, the Buddha flowered, the Buddha awakened, open to this inherent potential that we all have to wake up. And so that image, I think, of tilling the soil, watering the plant, ensuring sunlight, and then the plant will flower out of its own inner flowering potential, if you like. So I want to share those reflections and just kind of invite you to think about your own experience of practice. Some of you may be very new to the practice. Some of you I know have been practicing for many years. And, we think about what changes have you seen in yourself and how you're living that come out of your practice, and have these changes, have they largely come through gradual training? Maybe leading, as Ajahn Chah says, to letting go a little, you'll experience a little freedom. Have there been times when you've experienced significant breakthroughs that have changed, maybe in very significant, very profound ways, how you see your life, how you live your life, how you engage in the world? I think it's helpful to reflect on this in our own life and kind of turn the spotlight on our own practice. What has been helpful to you in your practice over however long you've been practicing? What has led to some aspects of letting go? I think one point I want to make is, even though I'm talking about awakening, and it can seem like a kind of a very lofty goal, the ending of suffering. One thing I think that is important is that really any time we let go, even if it is in Ajahn Chah's phrase, it's saying letting go a little, it really points to that deeper potential for letting go. Any time we're holding on to something, we're clinging to something, we want something to be a certain way, and we're able to see, oh, I don't need to hold on, or it's not helpful for me to hold on, it's just creating suffering. Each time we we realize that is, you might see that as a kind of a small moment of awakening that helps create the conditions for that deeper awakening, as well as developing in us, helping us develop the confidence and the trust that this is a trustworthy path. We can trust these practices, and we can engage with them, and we can see for ourselves what leads to happiness and what leads to suffering, and we can incline in the direction of happiness and freedom rather than suffering. So if we look at this question, what sudden awakening, gradual awakening, we're all different, and there's no really one path to awakening. There's certainly not, as far as I can see, there's not a correct way of doing things. We're all different. We all have different experiences, different karma, different, experiences of practice. And, I've known people who've practiced for decades, practiced meditation, practiced mindfulness for decades, and who would say they've never had a sudden breakthrough. And yet they would say that their lives have changed profoundly through their practice, that they live in a much freer way through the training, through the gradual training, through the practices, but without having, without being able to say, oh yeah, I had this sudden illumination that, I could let go of this. It was much more a kind of a gradual step-by-step training. I've also known of people who've had little or no formal practice, but who've had, spontaneous awakening experiences. Some of you may be familiar, probably many of you, with Eckhart Tolle, the teacher, wrote The Power of Now. Wow, it must be almost 30 years ago now. And he spoke about his experience, of being almost suicidal, and the kind of fight between selves within himself, and then kind of breaking through. And I'm not familiar, can't remember his practice before, but I don't think this really didn't arise out of the practice. It was one of those breaking through experiences, and his teaching since then has kind of come out of that awakening. And I think in many ways his teachings reflected his own path. I think he wasn't so much teaching a gradual path in the way the Buddhist path, perhaps doing more as time went on. But there are people that have just deep breaking through, letting go to freedom that comes that doesn't seem very much connected with practice at all, and they may not have had any real formal practice. I'll just say a little bit about my own kind of journey. I shared this in a talk. I think it's on Insight Time and maybe other places as well. It's called The Journey and the Path, of how, of before I was ever really acquainted with these teachings, I had an experience of, just really of some not quite out of nowhere, but a kind of really one of these letting go experiences that kind of, for me, opened a door to all of everything that's happened in the 35 years since then. And I think if there was a spur to it, it was reading a book on Zen Buddhism, which seemed fairly incomprehensible to me, but was nonetheless quite interesting. I was curious about it, and I was kind of plowing through it. And I just had the experience of, just being in this kind of place of a kind of a dilemma. And it was around a really simple thing of, do I go this way or this way? I didn't quite know the way to go. And then there was this kind of just walk, I was like, and there was like a trapdoor fell away. And, people, there are, and that for me, that what was important there was it kind of opened a door to me. It's kind of, oh, there's something, and I connected it with this, the reading that I'd been doing, but it wasn't a product directly of the reading, but something had kind of been activated in my mind. And people have these experiences, and they're not final awakening experiences, but they give a kind of point to, what the kind of experiences that can lead to, to the deepest freedom that the Buddha taught about. And, at different times, I say for me, perhaps it was 3 or 4 times in 30 years, there'd been, most of it's been kind of a gradual practice. It's been training, it's been meditation, it's been understanding the teachings and deepening understanding of those. But then at times there have been these moments of just kind of openings, and it really varies a lot from person to person. And it's, there's no need to have these, as I said, and, but there's some, what's interesting, I think, is that one of the things after one of these experiences, one of the things I recognized is that I would actually need to change my life if I were to live in alignment with what I'd come to see, with one of these kind of letting go experiences, that there was a way in which I wasn't living in a completely honest way, wasn't fundamentally lying or anything like that, but it just didn't feel in alignment with what I'd come to see, and that changing, the way I was living took a good deal of time. Making changes in terms of how I was living and the relationships I was in. And a lot about, awakening is not just about kind of how it happens and what conditions lead to it, but how does it manifest afterwards? What happens when we are able to let go, and we are able to open to freedom, the deepest freedom that's possible, or deep levels of freedom. In the Zen tradition, there's a saying, after the ecstasy, the laundry. You may have heard this saying, and Jack Cornfield has a book, After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, based on that saying, that when there is, when we do let go, when we are able to kind of break through to, insight and letting go, we still have the challenge of how do we live our lives, living in alignment with what we've come to see. We've still we go back to our families and our relationships and our jobs and all of that. And how do we live our lives? And in the end, the test of any awakening, any kind of breaking through to levels of freedom is, how do we live our life? It's in the practice that you'll know people. You know people by how they act, by their compassion, by their kindness, by their, living ethically, and all of these things. So what I want to, the view I think that I connect with most around, the path to awakening is that the gradual training, although it can just happen out of nowhere and in a sudden way, the gradual training is, practicing meditation, studying the teachings, bringing them fully into our own life and into our own practice. That approach, that gradual approach, helps create the conditions. As in the saying of awakening is accidental, but practice and training make us accident prone. I mean, it's like the flower, image as well, that we create the conditions and then awakening can happen. We don't control when insight, arises, but we can make the soil really, fruitful for the arising of awakening. But when awakening happens, when insight happens, it is, as I was saying earlier, it does involve a sudden breaking through. There is some, even if it's a product of, years and years and years of gradual training, when that breakthrough occurs, it is something falls away, something is seen more clearly, and out of that clear seeing comes, the ability to live with greater freedom and compassion, greater wisdom in our lives. So the invitation is to, just reflect on this. If this is helpful, it's a helpful reflection today for you. Think about your own practice. Think about, what will, since all of the teachings lead towards, point us towards the freedom, of ending suffering in our lives. What is it that, what will be most fruitful for you? Where to put your attention to deepen your practice and help create the conditions for awakening. So I'll leave it here for today, and in terms of the talk, I hope that something is useful in that. Anything that's not useful, please leave on the cushion or on the seat, and I'll put the name of the poem in there, David, and invite Kirsten to lead us in some movement.
Thank you so much for that talk, Hugh. So, hey, let's awaken into our bodies since we've maybe been sitting. So if it's possible for you to stand, go ahead and let's stand. And just shake it out a little bit, maybe. And then take a nice deep breath. Bring those hands up and overhead. Grab your right wrist, press into that right foot, and lean to the left. And I'm trying to do mirror here, so if this confuses anybody, just go to one side, but press into that same foot, extend up and out. Beautiful. And maybe start looking towards the sky. Beautiful. Coming back, bring those hands back down. Beautiful. Breathe in, bring those hands up overhead, grab the opposite wrist, press into that opposite foot, lean to the right this time. Breathe in, feel the opening in the left ribs of your body. So one of the 4 foundations is awakening in the body. Beautiful. And maybe twisting a little to look towards the sky. Beautiful, bringing those hands back down. Lovely. So go ahead. Here, I'm going to have to move my camera. Apologies. So we're going to bend over. So let's go ahead and we're going to bend over. Just slide your hands down your thigh. Feel your feet in the earth And you're just going to stop about above the knees. And we're just going to do a few cat-cows here, or just bending the spine a little bit. So we're going to bow the spine down, bring the head up. Let's breathe in. And then breathe out. Curl that spine up. And breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And just find your pace, maybe one of these, and try to feel the heart. Draw it from the heart, not necessarily the head. Try to really bring that heart back. Bring it open. Bring it back. Find that breath. Beautiful. And then just let's roll up. And let's go ahead and roll those shoulders. So go ahead and roll them back. Bringing the shoulders up towards the ears. Feel some looseness in your knees. Come the opposite direction. Beautiful. I'm getting some cracks out, so that's good. Beautiful. So go ahead and we're going to clasp those fingers in front of us. Bring the palms out. I'll go from the side and push out and then come up. Beautiful. Breathe in. Maybe look towards the sky. Sorry, I've got my cape on today. It's cold in my house. Beautiful. Coming back down, pushing that spine back again. Beautiful. Come back up. Beautiful. And then hands down. Beautiful. So let's just move those shoulders independently. Nice. Wiggle it out. Opposite direction. Woo. Beautiful. Okay. So we're just going to do a little twist. Because I don't know about you, but my spine needs it. So I'm going to bring one hand behind to my lower back. And I'm just going to press down. And then I'm just going to twist to that side. Maybe bring my hand across. And then I'm going to look over my opposite shoulder. Always good for the nervous system. Beautiful. Coming back to center. And then just going to the opposite side. So bringing your hand to your lower back. Breathing in. And if you can't stand, this is a great one to do in your chair. And bringing that opposite arm around like it's trying to reach towards that hand that's hitting the lower back. Breathe in. Breathe out. Beautiful. Come back to center. Beautiful. So we're going to do a forward fold and just stop wherever you need to stop. If going all the way down, vertigo or any kind of issues, just stay where we were with the knees. But if you can, you're just going to take your hands to the top of your thighs and you're just going to slowly bend forward from those hips. Allow those hands to scrape along. I should probably do my camera again. Just coming down here, you can see all the junk in my office coming all the way down. And just bow forward, maybe stopping at your shins. Extend that spine out. And if it's possible, you can lean all the way down. And just let those arms get heavy. Maybe even swaying side to side. Extending that spine a little bit. Beautiful, nice. And then rolling back up. Keep those hands on the fronts of your leg to feel your connection back into your body. Oh, good, I didn't decapitate myself. So we'll do one more move or maybe a couple more. Just stretch those arms out. Open that heart. Look towards the sky. Oh, it's so nice and sunny today, right? Beautiful. So we're going to look over our right hand, but we're going to bring that palm down. And I'm going to leave my left hand palm up. I'm just going to look over that. And then we're going to switch. Look to the left. And then look to the right. Look to the left. Look to the right. Beautiful. Coming back center. Bring those hands together to your heart. Bow to everyone. Thank you so much. Back to you. Whoever it is, Hugh or whomever.
Thank you, Kirsten. Beautiful, lovely. Thank you. Thanks so much. Always good to get into the body. We can get really, really stiff and tight. So thank you for that. It's beautiful. So just looking at time, we don't have very much of it. So what I think we will do is, if you have any questions or any observations, please put them in the chat, and I'll take note of them. And maybe next time, which for me will be in two Sundays, I'll be able to address things then. I think what we'll do is we'll just have a short meditation to finish, and then some announcements. So just for the last 5 or 6 minutes or so. So just take a moment to settle into your seat if you're sitting. Inviting the shoulders to relax and the belly to be soft. Just open to what's present. You might notice if anything has changed in the almost hour and a half we've been here with the meditation and the talk and the movement. Anything feels different. Welcome to impermanence. And as you breathe in, you might just bring awareness to your breath and wish yourself well. Maybe appreciate the time you've spent in practice today, taking this time, as Martha Postlethwaite speaks of, creating a clearing in the dense forest of our life. So appreciating that, and then appreciating all of us here together today, how we wake up together, that being part of community is really at the heart of awakening. Not an isolated individual thing, but all of us waking to our potential. You might breathe out and wish everyone here well. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you live with ease and with kindness. As you breathe in, wish yourself well. Breathing out, wishing everyone here well. Let your wishes, your kindness go out into the world to include all beings. We'll finish with a well-loved poem by a well-loved poet, Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting. Over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So again, imagining the sound of the bell. Think of the Buddha's teachings as a bell that's still resounding down through 2,500 years of history, down to us today. So we'll finish off with some announcements today. I'll just mention, as we do each session, that there's no cost for joining this class. It's offered on a dana or generosity basis, and that's how the teachings have come down to us through 100 generations. Through teachers and supporters, being able to keep these teachings going and pass them on, and deeply grateful for this practice of dana or generosity. The donation goes to support the teacher, me today, and a portion, just 10% typically, to IMCW for their costs and putting on classes, etc. So thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity.